we're going to have a nice conversation with Cham. Cham? Hello? Perfect. Hi. So, can you give us a short introduction? Or like an introduction. Or like a short... yeah. Lovely. That's great. That is great stuff. So, Cham, since we've got you here today, we're gonna pick your brain a little bit. So, in the first part, we were talking about sexual health and how we can have those open conversations, and how the more we have these conversations, it will actually ingrain itself in our minds that we should do it and we can do it, and there's ways of taking care of our sexual health. The main point was that we tend to segregate that concept. So it's that there's obviously mind, body, and spirit. So same way there's body, like there's your mental health, there's your physical health, and there's sexual health, and how we kind of take care of everything else but the sexual health, like we kind of detach that from that. So why do you think that is?
To your sexual health or even your mental health, then it suffers, and a lot of stuff snowballs when they don't really have to, when you could have just sort of prevented something or treated something or gotten people to understand your situation when it was still really early on.
So that is a nice thing that you said. We're human beings and we like to kind of chop and change things. So when you're saying, and I want to touch on that, you were saying that getting it or discuss it earlier on. Just can you reintroduce yourself just one more time, because on IG Live it didn't actually pick you up earlier on, but now it can. So that way the people on IG Live actually also know who is speaking.
Yeah, sure. So I was saying my name is 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝗪𝗃, or Cham for short, and I'm a sexual health and HIV prevention advocate, and I'm a project manager with the Terrence Higgins Trust, which is the UK's leading HIV and sexual health charity.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So we might as well go into, I've got like a few questions that I feel like our listeners would actually benefit from. So the first question is, because obviously you mentioned that you work with the Terrence Higgins Trust and that you are an advocate. So most of us, we see these things, we hear about them, but we don't know what it is. So for example, right now, there's this new campaign that you guys have brought out or are launching, and it's called PrEP. And if you could let us know what it is.
Yeah, sure. So, I think I was listening into the first hour of the show, which was really great. Lots of interesting questions and people feeding in. And I think it's really clear that, sexual health is something a lot of people take seriously and give props to, which is really great, obviously for me, although I may be a bit biased.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Oh wow, that is interesting. That's actually interesting. I don't think many of us knew that. Mm-hmm. That is amazing. So obviously, this is why I like having these conversations, and this is why we need to have more of these conversations, because we don't know that there's actually a treatment like that where you can live your whole lifespan. Because I mean, my understanding, even me, when I first heard about AIDS, it was in the 90s, and it was like literally, oh, you get HIV and then you get AIDS and then that's it, kind of thing. And now you're saying that there's actually people now, because of the medication and how technology has advanced, that you're able to have it and still live a fulfilled life, and it doesn't impact your sexual life. Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. We need to, yes, this is it. This is, because obviously, like we're saying, there's different generations. Earlier, we were talking about generational gaps and how we need to have conversation even with the elders about sexual health, and how it's starting and it's great. And I'm sure if I'm to bring this to my aunt and speak to my elders about it, they'll be like, really? But actually, my aunt, I think she might know already, but the others, they might not. And I think it's really, really good that we're able to progress like this, not just technologically with our phones and everything, but also in education, and also being able to provide more value to people's lives. Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Comfortable if they're in that situation.
That is perfect. That is perfect. I mean, in all honesty, even with PrEP, you already mentioned what it is. And what about, who is it then designed for? I mean, you touched upon it just briefly just now, saying that the people, like we were saying, that people said a higher percentage said they wouldn't date somebody that has HIV. So who is actually PrEP designed for?
So PrEP is really for anybody who thinks they might, be at risk, or they may not know. Like sometimes, it's just people think that they can see a person and know that they have HIV, or know that they may be having like the type of person in quotation marks who has HIV, and that's completely false, because someone, like you were talking about how STIs like chlamydia can be asymptomatic, so can HIV. And so really PrEP is for anybody who is having sex without a condom, with more than one person at a time, or let's say, they're going on a holiday trip, like else, party. Here. Just saying.
Afro Nation, definitely, yeah.
Situations where someone's going to party, and sometimes people don't like how condoms feel, it's not convenient, they just don't use it all the time. And so someone is in that situation, is perfect for them. Or sometimes, some people are in like complicated in and out relationships, and for those situations, it's just that sort of PrEP is the beauty of PrEP is that you take it and you're in full control of your own sexual health. You don't have to rely on someone else, like either using a condom, or you don't have to rely on someone else like testing and then like you trusting them. Obviously now we want people in relationships to trust each other, but we know that life's a bit messy, and so this is just something you can do to protect yourself.
I think that's amazing, and with the polls in general that I had rolling on Instagram, that's the main consensus I've got, that most people are very like accountable. They're wanting to have those open conversations. They're wanting, to check themselves to protect themselves and others. So I'm really happy that we are stepping into this positive way, or in this positive light. Especially I'm happy with the one poll that came back 100% whether you can get HIV from kissing somebody or sharing the same cup. And I was really, 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 really happy with the tribe. Like I like to call the Instagram the tribe. Like that's the tribe. They're very glued up. I was so super proud of them, and it was amazing. So moving on, we've got another question. The other question is, we were talking about success rate. So what is the success rate of PrEP?
Yeah, this one really comes up a lot, because it's like, okay, you're telling me it works, but how well does it really work? Really,
Yeah.
Question, because you're asking people to trust in this technology and use it, and the thing is, it's extremely effective. Its success rate is over 97%.
Wow.
Medications, or even like, let's say condoms, for example, it only works as well as you use it. So similarly, like it has to be taken the way it's meant to be taken. So I would say like 7 days before sex, and then like 7 days after sex. So it's like, so during that period when someone's having like that sort of sexual activity, like that season, we call it seasons.
Yeah. We're in our season right now.
Well, we're in the corona season.
Yeah, but there's more babies being born, so I do think we're in a season. We're definitely in a season.
Yeah. So I would say it's really effective, and you know what, Idol? I always say that, it's more effective than not doing anything at all.
100%, and I think that's exactly it. And you hit the nail on the hammer, because like I was saying earlier, most of us, it's just kind of like, oh, we should ask our partners to get a checkup before we start having sex, but we just go in, hope for the best, and go and get checkup after. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be more forthcoming. And I was even saying, if somebody feels offended by it, it might be a good sign for you that you shouldn't go into that space with that person.
Yeah, well, I know people have to sort of navigate their own, situations, but it is always a really, I think people sometimes, they just have that fear or hesitation before even raising it. And I think people, like you were saying, sometimes like how people learn about sexual health, it's all very like either in society it's hypersexualized from a young age, or in schools it's kind of uncomfortable and awkward, and like you feel this shame and embarrassment, and there's no real like sort of healthy approach to it. And so, and like being given that confidence even as a young person or as an adult, you know, like I'm almost 30 and I still like, and this is my work, you know, and it's I ever in an educational setting where I was told this is really how you navigate those sort of questions in a relationship to make sure you're protecting your sexual health, and the answer is no, you know. And so I think people have this have not really been like, I think just it's about being conscious, and two, just thinking about ways that they can just comfortably ease it into a normal conversation. You know, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's not about saying, I don't trust this person. You know, you're just saying you're both adults, and, you know, you both care about the other person, and you just want to protect the other person. So this is just something, you know, and now there's more options than ever, because sometimes people want to test, and then they're just like, I can't be bothered. It's too much effort. I don't know where to get. So many options to test. It's really super easy and convenient.
So going just back to PrEP a little bit, or staying with PrEP. So are there any side effects of PrEP?
On the whole, no, I wouldn't say there are any significant side effects. Within the first couple of weeks of taking it, there may be minor side effects, like a headache or a tummy ache, but that's just similar to all medications. And then once the body adjusts to it, then it's fine for majority of people. So anything significant is classified as very rare.
Perfect. That makes sense, because even sometimes some people would take aspirin and it's supposed to help with headache, but you still got a side effect of a slight headache.
You know, ibuprofen, you know.
Exactly. So, looking at HIV and obviously the numbers of HIV, how many people are actually affected by this in the UK?
So there's about 105,000 people living with HIV in the UK.
But when you think about that number, it's not even that big, because I mean our population is, okay, I'm not gonna start guessing off the top of my head, because I know in London it's a couple of millions already, right?
Yeah. So I mean I don't know either. Sorry.
Yes, it's probably, yeah, you're right, around 60 million. So, and that's just in London alone, and then we've got everywhere else. So that number is actually not quite high.
So it is. I would say that it's okay. It's not the highest. Definitely there. It's like the UK is not considered like a high prevalence country, but it's in majority of the cases are in certain communities. So I would say like about 60% of the cases are in people who are men who may have sex with men, or who identify as gay or bisexual. And the other, I would say like 30% is in people from African communities who are living in the UK. And so even if you look across the general population, it seems like a small proportion. You know, it's in these communities, and so, and you know, and you just really can't tell where people living with HIV may be, and there's so much harmful ideas around HIV in society, in the public, that I think all of us sort of have a responsibility to understand more about it, to take the steps, you know, if you're not living with HIV, to prevent it, such as PrEP or condoms or regular testing. And if we are living with HIV, to just know that, you know, we're not going to go somewhere like a random house party and someone casually mentions something about like, oh, you know, someone who has HIV is unclean, and then that impact that may have on them because the people around them don't know they have HIV. So sort of everyone has a kind of responsibility to sort of know a bit about it and the facts, and why it's really important not to discriminate and just to be a bit more accepting and kind.
Okay, you're completely right. And then I think sometimes as well, even on social media, we become so desensitized that things come up. And that situation of like the example that you gave of the house party and somebody mentioning something like that is not something that is unheard of or uncommon. It's something that is actually, it could happen.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I think online especially is one of those spaces. People feel very comfortable sort of to just say things and not realizing actually how someone may really take that. And I think really what really helps to get rid of that is actually an understanding of what the facts are, what really works, and being able to see human faces who are affected by this,
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why I was saying we need to start having more open conversations. If we're going into the next question, because it kind of feeds in nicely, what are the stigmas around a person with that's HIV positive?
So stigma is kind of this idea, this feeling of shame or worry about being discriminated or actually experiencing discrimination from other people, either like in social settings, like we gave an example, or at work. Help from the NHS in like a clinic. And I think people worry about it more, and that stops them from being comfortable to share that information. And also, so some of it is like an idea, it's a perception, and then some of it is actually tangible, it's a reality. Like when they tell people, they'll be treated differently. And one of the most, I think for us, and please tell me if I'm being a bit boring.
That's fine.
But in healthcare settings, like sometimes some people report like when they go to the dentist will always like give them the last appointment of the day. Or we have to like extra clean the equipment, Go for an operation, like you have to do the last surgery of the day so that we can make sure we clean everything down.
Wow.
Like, or or sometimes like you can't be a pilot if you have HIV, and some of it is like there's no real basis to it. It's just discrimination. Because if you think about the dentist, so I'll give an example. So let's say like hepatitis is another condition it's transmitted via blood, and a lot of people are not diagnosed. Only about half of the people in the UK are actually diagnosed. So my reasoning is always and because I know the science of HIV and medication, and the fact that people with HIV, 97% of them are diagnosed and are taking treatment, so they can't pass it on. And so I'm more worried about the random person in the chair who's never had an STI test, who's never had a hepatitis test, who may have and then it makes me wonder, like, are you not cleaning your equipment properly between every patient? Are you not following the right infection control procedures? So it just kind of becomes like pure discrimination, or it starts to make you question, like,
Exactly, because it's true. Because I don't think that's a good enough reason to say that they should be last. Because essentially, after every single patient or every single person, they're supposed to clean it. And I think this is what I'm kind of happy Corona happened, because it just even goes to show how we as a society were cleaning before. Even when you go on the tube now, they're like, we use hospitalized degradable something to disinfect the trains, right? And at the beginning of when the lockdown was lifted, when you would walk into the train, you would smell the disinfectant. You could smell this place was clean. Whereas before, there was no such thing. It didn't smell clean. Obviously you would get the people that would come and clean it down, but it wasn't deep clean like before. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. The standard is supposed to be like that anyway. So why wait for something bad or something that's extreme or a pandemic, something like that to happen, to be like, okay, I'm going to take my job now serious and, scrub all the floors. So which is the same, I feel, with those clinics that are saying, we're going to take this patient last so we can, deep clean the equipment. That's the same concept.
Because, these are healthcare professionals. You shouldn't be perpetuating stigma and discrimination. You should be helping to get rid of that, helping to make people feel comfortable and welcome. This is why people are afraid to, tell people around them, because they're worried that they're going to just get discriminated. I was really pleased, how everyone said like 100% of people saying we wouldn't mind sharing cups and things, because that just shows, you know, some kind of basic understanding, some humanity of like, this isn't, you know, like say for example, honestly, you're more likely to get COVID, of course, by sharing cups than, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's about this understanding of how like sometimes conditions work, like infections work. And we know now that HIV is really not transmitted in saliva. And so, you know, it's fine. So I think that really helps to break down that stigma as well.
I think that one was most important because I remember being young, and I remember there was like this one situation where like an aunt had given like a kid something, and the parents were really upset because they knew like that the person was sick. Well, obviously at that time they didn't tell us what it was just like the person's sick, and I didn't quite get it. I was like And then obviously back then in the 90s they didn't really understand it, so for them they even saw that as, you know, irresponsible of that aunt at the time. So
it reminds me of when, you know, they were like, you know, early in March when people were disinfecting their shopping or like leaving it out for 2.
Yes.
Because it's like you don't know, so you try and be like super cautious. But that then sometimes can go overboard. Like, you know, we heard so many stories. I have a friend and she's Chinese, and she was telling me how she got so much discrimination because people like thought she was kind of responsible. So yeah,
I think definitely with the corona, it did create that kind of stigma around Chinese people now, and it's something that sometimes is so casual. Because I remember I was out with friends, and one friend must have been like, "Oh, shall we eat Chinese?" And she must have mentioned, "No, these are the people that have corona, that gave us corona," or something like that. And then I was just like, everyone in the group kind of just turned, and she was like, "What? It's true." And I was like, oh wow. So to become so desensitized, that's what I mean. Sometimes we're becoming so desensitized that there's no filter, there's no accountability for what even people are saying or how it affects other people. Because you were mentioning your friend, she's going through this experience because of something that was completely out of her control, and it's just stigmas and memes and the media and all of that adds to it as well. So that doesn't really help sometimes. But I am happy that people are getting a better understanding of HIV. With the cup, I was so happy with that. Whether you can get it if you kiss or share a cup with someone, I was so happy that it was 100%. I was just like over the moon. I was like, yes, you get me all glued up. This is good.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So we're gonna have a look at some of the polls that were posted throughout, and then we can discuss them. So we already discussed the one, would you date someone that has HIV? So we had, would you leave your partner if she brought an STD into your home? 58% said yes, and 42% said no.
I think that's a really interesting one. Obviously, you know, people will have their own, you know, you can't, every person's relationship is different.
Exactly.
But generally, I think there's a bit of it depends on the situation, it depends on your structure, it depends on the trust between the partners and the situation. So like you gave the example of saying, like, let's say you agree, both of you, to do an STI or an STD test before you start having sex. And, you know, and then one of the partners actually gets like chlamydia. Actually, like you were saying earlier, it's a good thing in that case, because then, you know, chlamydia, honestly, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, it's just like a quick 2-week antibiotic course. That's it. And then you're treated and you're fine and you can move on. You know, and actually you finding out early and you having that discussion and conversation, you know, you've missed then getting infected from it. You've missed maybe the long-term effects. You've missed, like, you know, so like syphilis, it can actually cause like issues in babies, like congenital syphilis. And, you know, so always knowing about an STI or an STD, the earlier the better. And like telling your partners it should be seen as a good thing. It's part of that healthy ongoing conversation.
Yes.
If someone's taken that poll, like, okay, let's say I was in this relationship with a person for a while, and then a year later, I thought we were not seeing other people, and they tell me, oh, by the way, I have an STI, and you're like, what? And you can't really dictate what that person responds.
Yeah.
Say that can be a sign for you to say, okay, even if maybe something's happened and we have to work on our relationship, but I still am committed, I know that I need to still take care to protect myself, and then you can at least look at PrEP as an option.
Yeah.
Still kind of just relying on yourself, but you're still giving the situation a chance as well.
That is excellent. That you're right. It's also like, because as we were talking about this, a question popped into my head, which was basically, can you catch an STD or STI by sitting on a public toilet?
No.
Oh.
No, that's yeah, it's not. It's really difficult because with these like germs or pathogens, they sort of have their like perfect situation, their perfect medium, like they want, and that's usually like in sexual fluids, in body fluids. So particularly like with HIV, it's really through sex, I would say, through sexual fluids, mostly. And then with gonorrhea sometimes it's easier for it to be transmitted through oral sex.
Oh, okay.
And and there's always a chance of the other STI. There's a minimal chance, but it's still there. You should really be careful as well. But other than that, like any kind of casual contact, any kind of kissing, like we were talking about sharing cutlery, going for a haircut, there's really no risk with that.
Okay, that makes sense. Because obviously, growing up, I remember like you don't sit on the public toilets because you can get infections. And then obviously I was thinking, infections, what, And then that's why it popped to my head, is like, can you actually grab?
Honestly, true. I think generally, I would probably say maybe the only thing to be careful of is maybe like E. coli, so more infections like that are digestive system infections. So, and even then, it would have to be a bad situation, but no, so not STIs, I would say.
Okay, and then obviously, what's the other one? The more common one that the word kind of left me now. When you have an infection, a vaginal infection, yeast. You can get yeast from using a public restroom, right? Because if they didn't clean it properly and you sat down, and I'm sure that
yeast infections, I think it just really depends. So I think with that, it's more around like personal hygiene. And someone like, actually what's more likely to give you a yeast infection is like washing with soap.
Okay, so like Femfresh.
Yeah, actually those are all really bad because they sort of disrupt the natural cleaning mechanism and going overboard, because it's like there's a really good balance, of like a healthy system of microbiome, like it's well balanced. So something like antibiotics can also affect it. But I would say like public restrooms, I guess it just depends, like, sometimes, those portaloos can get a bit scared.
Exactly.
I think I would be more concerned with that about, like just making sure that you wash your hands really well, or, if there's no soap, then making sure you use a hand sanitizer, which, nowadays everybody has on them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's really like yeast infections or STIs, not transmittable.
Okay, perfect. No, because obviously we've got another question, which was, one second, another poll. And this one was interesting, so that's why it kind of fed into that. It was like, what if you cheat on your partner and you find out you have an STD? 89% said they will have an open and honest conversation, and 11% said they would wait for the confrontation. So that's why I was wondering, if you're waiting for the confrontation, how would you direct that conversation? Because it's like, oh, obviously, oops, I sat in a public toilet, you know, or yeah.
So you'd be like trying to be like, what else could be a reason why?
Exactly.
One of the things, I guess it just depends, but you know, like we talked about, I think it's a bit of a tricky one, because obviously for us, we think that, you know, having that trust and honesty in those relationships is really critical when you're trying to build up something long term, if that's what is going on. So it's really hard to say, like, oh, this is some tactics you could use.
I don't think we should give them tactics, though. I you know, like, but I know it's like something like, okay, I went to the beach club and I used the public towel. You know how sometimes they give you towels. I can't, in my head, obviously these are things maybe as well, in the older generation they would say, you know, don't share your bath towel with anyone and so forth. But I think that's more hygienic purposes, not like you're actually going to catch something. But yeah, I don't think we should give them ammunition for...
It doesn't really work, if I'm honest. And I think it's just, it just, you know, people will do what they, you know, people have choice and control over their decisions, their relationships. But, you know, with sexual health, I think we need to sort of frame it positively and, you know, in an honest and open way, you know. And I think we have this thing of doing things in secret, or sometimes in the long run, it's just worse, because what you do is, if you're giving people more suspicion and less trust, mistrust, you know, that just makes things break down quicker or make things backfire. And I think just having those open and honest conversations, you won't really go wrong. Because even if it may lead to some friction and some upset in the short term, in the long term you'll be stronger, because, you know, you and your partner have that trust that even when things get bad, that, you know, you are honest with each other.
Precisely.
Things. That's my personal view, though. So
that's true, though.
Trouble. Okay, I'm not liable.
So, in all honesty, it's the truth, though. And I think at the end of the day, you're not gonna build a house when you don't have a foundation, right? You're not gonna build a house and start doing the walls if there's no solid foundation at the bottom. And that is about open communication and so forth. So I think you're completely right with that. And if we're going into the next one, which was, when is the right time to tell your partner of your HIV status? Right before intimacy or during the dating stage? So with this one, a whopping 100% of people said during the dating stage. This is when you should announce your HIV status to your partner. What would you say?
Can you give me the options again? During dating or?
Right before intimacy. So right before you get down.
I think that this is a really personal decision. So this is a decision only that person can make. That person only has to disclose who they feel comfortable with. Like, I've given you some examples of... I understand, because obviously there's two ways of it. You can see it obviously as
they need to feel comfortable and safe in that stage. And it's true, because you might not be their long-term partner and then you run off and you blast it out on social media. Or at the same time, also giving the other person the choice. Because obviously, if it's now, let's say, I don't know if you've watched this, what was it called? Was it Blind Love? Love Blind? Something like that. Yeah, something like that. And then one guy in there, he was you know when you don't date gender, you date by the person, how is that called? That sexual orientation. Basically, you don't identify with, yes. And then the woman, they revealed themselves to each other now. They were at their holiday spot. And then he mentioned that to her and she couldn't take it. And she was out and she felt like he needed to tell her that at the beginning. Whereas other people were like, no, but he should have told her when he felt comfortable, because this is a vulnerable part of himself that's opening up to her. And in both respects, I understand that. And at the same time, that person, it's got to do with people's values as well. If people don't or are not able to understand it, or are not unable to be able to see things through another person's perspective, then they're not ready for you. They might have been with you for the wrong reason. And it was really heartbreaking to see this on screen, because obviously you're seeing it it was on Netflix, so it wasn't live, but still it was on Netflix, and you're seeing him kind of heartbroken, and she's like, no, I can't do this, he should have told me at the beginning. So it's kind of that kind of conversation with the person that has HIV. They need to feel comfortable and open and feel confident that you're able to go or move forward with them. So they have to assess their situation first. And then the other person would be like, yeah, but you need to give me the choice. But then in here, it's like you have to see the balance and the ramifications of both. Which one would leave a higher impact? So which would be, okay, you telling this person now, I have this, it's not going to really leave them not even a higher impact, it's higher risk. It's a higher risk. Which one is a higher risk? Him or her telling you of their status is a higher risk than you finding out about their status and running off with that information, because it is sensitive information. Yes, you might feel like your option has been taken away at that moment or at that time, or you might feel like something was taken away from you because you have the right to know, but you still had to kind of almost like show your worth and prove yourself to them, because it is something. It's like, for example, you don't go around telling your family secrets to everyone. You know, it's the same thing, I feel. So, if we're looking at the polls again, this week's polls have been very, very interesting. Oh my days, this conversation is almost over. We've got 5 minutes. Oh, you see, time flies when you're having fun. Mm-hmm.
A little bit about our campaign, about PrEP, for anyone who is listening. Is like, oh my god, I never heard of this thing called PrEP. And someone I know, one of my friends, like, they're in this situation, this may be something great for them. If they want to know where they can get PrEP, all they need to do is call up their local sexual health clinic or drop them an email and just ask if they can find out about more, talk to a doctor or a nurse, and then see if it would work for them. And it's available for free through the NHS as well, which is brilliant, so no cost attached to it. And if they have any other questions, or if they want to know where they can get a test or anything, all they have to do is go to startswithme.org.uk.
Perfect. Let's actually stay in there. So the rest of the post we're not going to go through, because it's just we don't have that much time, and I actually want us to talk about this a little bit more. So what about if somebody wants to get a sexual health kit? Because now it's during Corona times, you can't really go physically to a clinic. So how can I you were mentioning earlier that there's convenient ways of getting tested. What does that mean?
So some areas, lots of the country, they actually offer home test kits. So those are kits that people can order online, and then they get it sent to them, and they just fill out a sample, and then they post it back to the lab, and then they get the results either online or through a text message, and they don't even have to really leave their house, which is brilliant. And there's a service that's available in most parts of London called SHL, or Sexual Health London, and if you just Google SHL test, STI test, the website will come up. And in other parts of the country, it's a bit trickier, but if you do go to your local sexual health clinic website, just say your area local sexual health, then they will be able to direct you to the service, the 𝗍sexual health service, or the online portal where you can order a test kit.
Perfect. So just one more time, so for those that missed it, how can I access PrEP?
Accessing PrEP, it is available for free through the NHS. And so you just need to call up your local sexual health clinic and ask them about it. Ask if you can speak to a nurse or a doctor to find out if it's a good fit and everything, make sure everything will be okay. And then, just start it as and when you need it.
Perfect. Oh, that was so nice. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cham. It was amazing. Anytime you want to come back, let me know and we'll sort that out again. So just before we sign off today, can I find actually PrEP on social media? Can I find it somewhere?
Well, if you want to sort of keep updated and know more, you can just go to @StartsWithMe UK and @StartsWithMe, and we post a lot about basics about PrEP and some other stuff as well, like when should someone have an HIV test, or which sort of test, do they go into a clinic, do they do it themselves, all those sorts of, if anyone wants more information about PrEP specifically, I think it's better just to go to the website, so startswithme.org.uk, and it'll just have everything you need on there.
Perfect. I'll add these links into this live so people can from Instagram can straight away hop onto that. So before you sign off, is there any advice on sharing? The question is, any advice on sharing my sexual health status with my partner?
Yeah, I think I would just say, make it casual, matter of fact. Don't make it a big deal. Just mention it hey, if you're, this is really important to me, let's make sure we're protecting each other. I care for you, and, and I care about myself, and I just want us not to have any worries in the future. Just do it, forget about it, keep up to date, and we can just move on with our lives.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cham. So, that was Cham. Do you want to say anything to our listeners?
Well, thanks so much for listening in and discussing this important topic. I hope you've learned half as much as I have. And, if you have any kind of questions or anything, just, you can reach me through IDO, and I'll be happy to talk to anyone who has anything further they're missing from the chat today.
Okay, thank you so much. So, with that being said, we've got 37 seconds. Thank you so much, guys, for listening in today to Outspoken Truths. I'm your host, 𝗍𝗲, and as always, I will see you next week, Sunday from 12 to 2, where we'll have another special guest on the show. So, thank you so much. Have an awesome weekend. Blessings for this new week. And like we said, always think and protect yourself. So with that, I wish you a lovely week. Okay, so hello. Okay, yeah, perfect. So I'm still here. I'm gonna call you back because I'm gonna cut off the live and then we can have a little chat. All right, thank you so much. All right, bye. Oh yeah, Young East African podcast. Yes, hey. Trust you guys are well. Let me sort this out. And thank you everyone for joining. As always, have an amazing week, and we'll see each other next week.